Hello. How are you all? Happy, God, I didn't know what day of the week it was there today. Happy Wednesday. Thank you all for tuning in. Hello Bernadette. Lovely to see you on here. As you all know, we're going to do a live this evening with the lovely Oonagh from Meaghers Pharmacy. So without further ado, I'm going to try and invite Oonagh. I haven't done this now in a while, so bear with me. Let me see now, is she coming up there actually? Oh, she is. Hopefully that worked.
Hi, Roseanna.
Hello!
How are you?
How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. I always have a bit of a flutter just before this all happens in case it doesn't connect or something,
I think we're
But I'm
all the
good.
same. I think we're
Yeah.
all the same. And I'm just looking at all the people that are on and I'm thinking, aren't
Yeah.
you great considering the weather's so lovely?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fair play to everybody that's on here instead of sitting outside in the evening time. Yeah. So
Yes.
listen, yeah, fair play.
I'm just going to turn up my volume here a little bit. Hopefully now we can hear each other. Can you hear
I
me okay?
can, yeah, I
Good.
can.
Now I can hear you better. Brilliant. I had to run everyone. They're out playing camogie.
Uh-huh.
Sorry. Dropping things here. They're out playing camogie and I was like, can you do it all out the back so that, I won't hear you.
Yeah.
I hope we're not going to lose each other. If we do have issues, I'll move to another
No,
room.
no
Are you
problem.
okay?
No problem. Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
okay? And will we just ask everyone, can you hear both myself and Oonagh? If there's any issues, let us know.
Somebody from Letterkenny. How's it going? All the way in Donegal.
Yes,
Yeah,
sitting in the sun, isn't it lovely? So,
absolutely.
can't get sound. Okay, let's just see now
Oh,
before we start.
can you hear me? Okay, Rosanna.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you can
Okay.
hear. All good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Brilliant.
So
Okay.
without further ado, Oonagh, who is
Yes.
here from your pharmacist and Meaghers Pharmacy MD, you are very welcome and thank you for taking the time to do a
Not
live.
at all. My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It's always good to have a chat and to explain things in a little bit more detail. And if anybody has any questions, they can ask on the live. And if they don't, because sometimes people are a little bit apprehensive about asking questions, particularly around their health, Rosanna, on
Yeah,
the live, they can always DM me afterwards. You can tag me or whatever, especially around medications and things like that.
yeah,
So I'm here to
absolutely.
help in any way I can. Yeah.
Yeah,
So just to say that.
perfect. And I would have gotten one or two questions today. I have them noted here. And one person in particular said that wanted to remain anonymous. So we
Yeah.
would never be
Yeah.
revealing any of that information.
Absolutely.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I suppose really what we're here to talk about, and we'll probably talk about a few different things, but the main
Yeah.
reason we're here is the famous Simprove.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
have
very
my
good.
bottle and I'm actually due a delivery tomorrow because I signed up to the
Oh,
subscription.
right. Okay. It's dead handy, isn't it? It's dead handy.
It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
brilliant. I'm so
Yeah.
fascinated by that. I really
Yeah.
am. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I think what we wanted to try and do was to bring the price down because it is more expensive than other probiotics on the market simply because the bacteria are alive and they're in the liquid form, and that's what makes it more expensive because you can only make a certain batch of it at a time because it doesn't have like years and years of shelf life like
Okay.
capsules and powders would have. But that's equally what makes it brilliant because
Okay.
the bacteria are in a water-based solution and they don't trigger digestion when you drink it. So the acid in your stomach don't kill the bacteria in it like what happens with capsules and tablets and powders and things like that, because the first place that those bacteria hit is your stomach, and your stomach produces loads of acid. So
Yeah.
the key thing in any probiotic is to make sure it has the clinical evidence to prove that the bacteria survive the stomach, because
Okay.
where the bacteria need to get to is the large intestine. They have to get to the large intestine, otherwise they won't work. That's where your microbiome is. So that's what makes Simprove very different to anything else that's on the market, but it is also what makes it expensive. So the whole thing with subscriptions was to try and bring the price down so it would be a better, more affordable price instead of paying for the whole 12 weeks all in one go, because we
Yeah.
always champion the 12-week program.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is really bring it down to monthly payments. You get it every month. You wouldn't have to be paying for delivery at
Yes.
all. So your delivery is included
Yes.
in it. And you can either sign up for the year but you can cancel with a month's notice,
Yeah.
with 30 days notice, and that's $54.99. Or you can sign up to just a flexible program, and you can cancel anytime, even after 1 month if you want, and that's $64.99. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you know what? I just think this is one of the best things because we'd be talking a lot,
Yeah.
the two of us, about different things. And you don't feel when you're honest, you don't feel when you're going into the press, like I keep mine in the pantry until I open it and then it's in the fridge.
Yes. Yeah.
And you don't feel the time going, a few weeks, and the next thing you're reaching for that last bottle, and you'll be
Yeah.
like, oh God, that's one more thing I need to do now is order my Simproof. But now I don't need to think about it.
Yeah, because
It's going to come to me directly.
Yeah.
And I'm saving a few euro by doing the subscription, which is great because that's something a lot of people will say, you know, someone actually said there's a lot of supplements out there. Is, you know, why is Simproof so different? I think you've answered it there. Because it is expensive, and I think you've answered why it is so
Yeah.
different because the bacteria in that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, just the
So
bacteria in a liquid form. That's the key difference. And people sometimes say, I prefer to take a capsule or to prefer to take a tablet. And that's absolutely fine if you do prefer that. It's just making sure that the brand that you're taking, whatever that brand might be, and I have yet to find a brand that can show the clinical evidence to actually show the bacteria survive in the stomach.
yeah,
And actually get into the large intestine. So that's what makes it different. Because it's in a water form, your body thinks it's water. As long as you take it in an empty stomach, that's why we say take it in an empty stomach in the morning. Don't eat or drink for 10 minutes.
yeah,
Because it is clinically proven after, well, it's 9.8 minutes, whatever, that your shot of Simproof, which is 10 billion bacteria in each shot, gets through your stomach and out the other side and into your intestines. And so none of the bacteria will be lost or be killed because your body thinks it's water. It's like 99% water with these bacteria in it. And so it doesn't trigger digestion. It doesn't start producing acid as a result of that. Because believe it or not, even if you're cooking and smelling food, your body recognizes that smell. It's called the Pavlov theory and will start to produce acid. Or if you take a cup of tea or you eat anything, your body's response is initially
yeah,
to produce acid. And what you're trying to do is to stop that to get the bacteria through the stomach and out into the other side so they can populate your large intestine. That's where they need to get to. That's where your microbiome actually is.
yeah.
So it's key. The delivery system of any probiotic is absolutely critical. It's absolutely key. Yeah.
That's what I find as well in the morning. Like it's the first thing I have to do, and it's funny sometimes if it's the weekend, and Ollie might say, "Oh, I'll do breakfast." I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be up in a minute. I have to take my Simproof. He'll bring it down to me sometimes. I'm a bit spoiled that way. He'll bring me down the Simproof, and then I'm like, oh, that's great to have it done and taken and out of the way because you need to have it. What I would kind of leave about 15 minutes
That's fine.
between.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can leave longer than the 10 minutes as long as you leave 10 minutes.
but
And it's
10
the same for medication. We often
minimum.
get asked that as well. Should I take, lots of people are on, say, Altroxin for thyroid, and the recommendation is always to take that on an empty tummy.
Okay.
But basically, once you take your shot of Simproof, your body is still, it's still like as if you've taken nothing, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
it's completely empty again. There is no acid because it doesn't trigger digestion. And so you can just take your medication as if you were waking up first thing in the morning. So we always say, don't even take your medications or anything. Take your Simproof first, wait 10 minutes or longer,
Mhm.
like you say, 15 minutes. Some people wait an hour because they're on the go or whatever, and then take your food or your drink or your medication. Some people even keep it in a little fridge, those Style Pro fridges we sell,
Yeah.
or you can get them or whatever,
Yeah.
in their bedroom,
Okay.
and take their
Okay.
shot in the bedroom.
Oh my
So
God,
yeah,
just to be sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to be
And
sure.
you
Yeah,
know, that brings me to ask you about, when you're traveling, that was one of my concerns. Like I've
yeah,
been on Simproof for about, God, I don't know, maybe 2.5 years now at this
right.
stage. And I remember speaking to you before about traveling and saying, how am I going to manage? And you were like, it's fine, you'll be grand. Like most hotels will have a little mini fridge. And if they
Yeah,
don't, you were saying that you fill the sink with water
yeah.
and leave it in.
Just put the
And now
bottle.
you also,
Yeah, just put the
yes.
bottle of water, a bottle of Simproof into like a sink of cold water, and then just keep on topping up the sink of cold
Yes.
water. You're just trying, as soon as you open it, the reason is you keep the open bottle in the fridge or keep it cold is as soon as you open it, air gets in and that starts to oxidize and break down the bacteria. So it's about the air getting in and about breaking the seal. That's why all the other bottles can be kept out of the fridge because you haven't broken the seal in them. So
Okay.
it's only to slow that oxidization process
Yeah.
down. That's all that you're doing here. So if you can keep it cold, it slows it down. And if you get the cap straight back on it and screw it tight, it slows it down as well.
Okay.
But now they even do the little travel ones, so
Yeah.
you don't even need to do that. Yeah, yeah,
They're
you can take
brilliant.
them
So
on the
that's
go.
your one shot a day.
Yeah,
They are the best thing as well. That's
yeah.
brilliant.
They're real handy,
They,
aren't they? Because you don't even have to worry about a fridge then, you
no,
know. Yeah.
because you mightn't have that luxury, and then you might have people fighting over the sink as well. So that can
Yeah.
become a bit of a problem.
Trying to brush their teeth and there's bottles of some brew bobbing up and down.
Yeah, exactly. That's just it. So, like some mornings, I'll just do take my shot. I won't even brush the teeth till the few minutes later. You know, that kind of way. I'm like, this
Yeah.
has to be done first thing. It has to be the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, and then I
Yeah.
feel like the day can't go wrong,
And
really.
And that's what I would say, Rosanna. Once you make a commitment, because it is pricey, try and do it properly. Try and, because I get sometimes feedback from people say, "Oh, listen, I just take it at lunchtime or just do." It's not going to work if you do that, because your stomach's full of acid, it's full of food, and
Yeah.
the bacteria will just be broken down. So if you're going to make the commitment and
Yeah.
pay the money for it, just try and really be committed to that 12 weeks. And the
Yeah.
first thing is by taking it first thing in the morning. It doesn't matter what time, you don't have to all get up and take it at 7 o'clock at the same time, but take it first thing, wait the 10 minutes, then the
Yeah.
bacteria in the large intestine. And then the other thing I absolutely always say is, and we all have different eating habits and all of the rest, and people eat on the go and all, but the bacteria in Simprove and the bacteria in your microbiome, even if you don't take Simprove, need fiber to grow and multiply. So the key thing, even for the 12 weeks, to get the best results is to make sure you're taking at least 30 grams of fiber a
Yeah.
day. Some of the research now says up to 50 grams of fiber a day. We're not eating anywhere near that at all. And fiber feeds the bacteria in your microbiome and feeds the bacteria in Simprove, and you will get a much, much better and quicker result if you do that. And the big thing is, once you increase your fiber intake, fiber in the large intestine absorbs water to bulk out your stool, out your poo as it passes through. And if you don't increase your water intake, what happens is it sucks all of the water in the large intestine, and it becomes more compacted, and it will cause a rebound constipation if you don't increase your water intake. So every time you increase your fiber, you must increase your water in correlation with that. And if you do that and take Simprove for 12 weeks, I can guarantee you will see life changing. It is a massive, massive change to your gut health. And you will see it in your gut health, but you will see it elsewhere in your body, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
And I think this is where I need to kind of come in and talk about my experience before we get into
Yeah.
the questions that we have. So you would know, and some of our followers would know, that I had stomach issues. And the reason I spoke with you and discussed this at length before I started on the journey was because I suppose maybe it was connected with anxiety, and that I could get caught in the hop very easily, that I would be in
Yeah.
the bathroom cramping, eating certain foods straight away. I'd be like, God, that's not going to stay in there. That's just not agreeing with me. And you were saying there about the 12-week course. I think I might have been on it 2 months, and I said to you, "Oh, Oonagh, I don't know. I don't think this
Yeah.
is working."
Yeah.
And you were like, stick to the course now. Talk to me in 12 weeks. And honest to God, I never looked back. And in January, when I was probably 2 years on it, I said, you know what? Now I'm going to take a
Yeah.
break. I'm going to take a break, because like that, it's expensive and stuff as well. And you'd be trying to, cut corners maybe, or say, well, maybe I'll hold off. Maybe I don't need to be on this for the rest of my life. But my
Yeah.
God, was I quick learning. I was back on it again by March.
Okay.
Gave it a break in January, and in February, my stomach started acting up again. And I said,
Okay.
it must be this. Back on it in March, and honest to God, I haven't looked back since.
Okay.
And, people will know, anyone I talk to, they'll know that it's my non negotiable.
Yeah.
It is the
Yeah.
only thing I take.
Yeah. All
It is the only
right.
thing I take.
Consistently. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, obviously, I don't know, like, if you've ever gone for a scope up and down, like, but obviously you have inflammation in your gut for certain foods. Anybody who eats certain foods and they have a bit of a reaction, and they know they're going to have loose bowel movements or whatever, you've got an inflamed gut. That's what's
Yes.
happening there. And that can be from a number of different reasons. And the only way of really getting to the bottom of that is to go and get a referral by your GP to a gastroenterologist and get your scope done. And I'd always say, if you're going to go for that and get a scope done, say up the back passage, just get the two done at the one time, because then you're seeing really from gum to bum, as
Yeah.
we say, because there
Oh,
is, yeah, because you can get inflammatory bowel disease. I suppose that's what you're trying to rule out.
yeah.
And Crohn's can affect anywhere from the mouth all the way back to the back passage, whereas
Yeah.
ulcerative colitis is really the large intestine and the rectum area. That's what you'd see.
Mhm.
So if you go for just the scope up the back passage, you might miss anything that's going on in the upper area. So it's good just to do that if you
Yeah.
have that kind of reaction. And I would encourage anybody
Yeah.
on here that does have that. And also, we in Ireland have a high percentage actually of celiac disease. It's
Mhm.
just with our gene makeup as well. And again, getting the scope down, because that's a disease of the small intestine. So that's just
Mhm.
outside your stomach, at the upper area.
Mhm.
So and that scope will identify that, because they'll see a flattening. It's basically along your gut. You have all these what we call villi. They're little fingers to increase the absorption as the food is broken down and passes through. But for people who have celiac disease, they have an allergic reaction, obviously, to gluten, and those little villi are flat, and so you have, I suppose, you don't have the same surface area to absorb nutrients, and only that scope will identify
Mhm.
100%. You can get a blood test that will show a marker in your blood to say you're likely to have it, but to absolutely 100% say you definitely have it, you have to have the scope, and they will take a little biopsy to do that.
Yeah.
So to rule out the likes of celiac, to rule out ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, or any other type of
Mhm.
IBD, I would encourage anybody who has that kind of reaction, like yourself, Rosanna,
Mhm.
just to get those tests done. And then you might not have to get it done for another 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, but
Yeah.
it is good to get that screening
Yeah.
done, just because
Yeah.
if anything is there, it's so treatable now. It's so
That's
treatable.
it. Well, I
So,
have had those. I do remember having the test done and ruled out for celiac and Crohn's and stuff, which was great.
great.
But you know the way you want answers. You're like, well, I still need answers. I'd still like to know what it is that's going on with me. So when I kind of felt I'd exhausted every avenue, that's when I went on the Simprove. But
Yeah.
good that you say that, because I probably should go back and have another scope just to see what's going on
Yeah.
now, you know?
And when those are ruled out and you don't have any kind of IBD or you don't have celiac, then they tend to, say that you've got IBS. IBS is like irritable bowel
Mhm.
syndrome, and it's almost a diagnosis of ruling everything else out. And they
Yeah.
rule everything else out, and then they leave you with IBS. I have IBS myself, and
Yeah.
you tend to either have IBS-C, IBS with constipation, or IBS-D, IBS with diarrhea, or sometimes people have a bit of both. So it can
Okay.
fluctuate between the two.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with me. Like, I went for all of the tests. I had huge bunches of piles because was so badly constipated, and as a result of that, I had to go and get surgeries to get these piles removed. And it was my gastroenterologist who told me about the microbiome and told me about getting a live probiotic, and I couldn't find one in Ireland. And then somebody connected me to Barry, who was the
Um,
founder of this, who's a farmer who produced it for his cows,
yeah.
nothing to do with humans or whatever, but connected me to him. And at that stage, he was just bringing it into human health, but he wanted to get the clinical studies done on it beforehand because he knew nothing about human health. He was a farmer,
Yeah.
and only whenever he got that through King's College in London, where a gastroenterologist, tested it with patients and he had a proper clinical trial, only then did he take it to market for human health. So this product has been, I suppose, around 30 odd years, but really
Mm.
for cattle and for
Yeah.
pigs and for ostriches first,
Yeah.
and then for humans.
Yeah, but look, we're there
We're
now,
there
and I
now.
mean, it's.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Fantastic. Well, look, I'm going to jump into some questions because I
Yeah,
know
sure.
that the people eager to have them answered. But you mentioned the microbiome, and I never heard of that word in my
Yeah.
life till I started taking Simproof.
Yeah.
So, what is the gut microbiome, and how can you support it?
Okay, so your gut microbiome is the term that we use for a collection of bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and microorganisms that live in and on our body. Okay, so the majority of these are bacteria, and the majority of them live in your large intestine. Like 99% of them live in your large intestine. People on the call would have heard of your microbiome of your skin. You have these bacteria living all over your body, and they play a really crucial role. And I know people kind of go, "Oh, bacteria, disgusting." You always think of infection, don't you, when you hear of bacteria? But these little guys are good for us. They live what we call in symbiosis with us. So that means they live in us, and we give them something. So we give them food to grow and multiply, okay, and keep them alive. They need a host. They wouldn't survive if they didn't live in a human. And what they give for us is these metabolites. So basically, when they break down food, the food that we eat, and we can talk about food in a second, but when they break down food, they all produce different metabolites, and there's all different species of them. So like hundreds and hundreds of different species. Unfortunately, we've lost 50% of our species since the invention of processed foods, but we still have a number of species, and each one of them, those species, produce different metabolites. So it's actually not the bacteria that helps us health-wise, it's actually what they produce, the metabolites that they produce. So what do they produce? Some of them produce our B vitamins, so gives us energy and everything. So that's why a lot of people will say when they take something like Simply, have a lot more energy because you're getting a lot more B vitamins produced. Some of them produce vitamin K, which is really important for clotting of our blood. Some of them produce short chain fatty acids, and people might not know what those are, but they are super, super important for our gut health because a lot of them have an anti-inflammatory effect. And so they end up taking inflammation down in the gut lining. And that would be really important for anybody who has ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or any kind of inflammatory bowel condition because it reduces the inflammation. It also, butyrate is one of those short chain fatty acids, and Simprove itself, the bacteria in Simprove, produce a huge amount of butyrate, and that butyrate seals up the gut wall. So if you've got ulcers or any little tears in your gut, it heals up the gut wall. And also anybody who has leaky gut. And again, it's really important to say that your gut lining is just made up of one cell thick in order to get nutrients across and into your blood system on the other side. So it's constantly repairing, but it's very, very delicate. And basically butyrate helps those cells of your gut lining to repair all of the time. And in between our gut cells, we have these little things called tight junctions. You can think of it like cement in a wall and bricks in a wall. And sometimes, and it's important for those, I suppose you've got to be permeable to allow nutrients across, but sometimes those tight junctions become looser. And what happens is the gut cells start to, I suppose, spread out, especially if you're constipated. It's like stretches the gut lining or whatever, and they stretch out, and then things that are inside your gut that should be expelled in your poo, like toxins, actually get in through across the gut lining and into your circulation. And we know that these toxins that are produced, a lot of them produced by bad bacteria, cause inflammation in our elsewhere in our body. So they get into our bloodstream, and people might have inflammatory, say, skin conditions or joint conditions or whatever. And we know that actually a lot of this is associated back to actually toxins in the gut that are escaping the gut through leaky gut and actually getting into your circulation. And then you end up getting all these other different conditions across the body that are actually linked back to your gut because your gut is not as healthy as it should be. So these little bacteria are super, super, super important because they produce metabolites. So that's, I suppose, the term that we use overall, that actually are really important for our health. A lot of them produce neurotransmitters as well. So for example, serotonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone. People think it's produced in your brain. It's not. Only 5% is produced in your brain and 95% is produced by these gut bacteria. So if you want to have higher levels of serotonin, which is the thing that reduces anxiety and improves your mood, and it has a role as well in gut metabolism and gut motility rather, it has a role also in lots of other things in your body, but particularly with around mental health. Serotonin is produced by these gut bacteria. So some of these species down in your gut is actually producing that. They produce dopamine, 50% of your dopamine, which is really important for your mood as well. That is produced by these gut bacteria. They produce melatonin, your sleep hormone is produced down here in your gut. So all these little bacteria in your gut, even though you can't see them, they're super, super important, and they're producing all these metabolites as long as you have them and have them in the right concentration, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is to increase the amount of good bacteria in our gut, and we need lots of different species of them because they all produce different things, if that makes sense. So we're trying to grow them and increase the number of good bacteria, whilst at the same time reduce the number of bad bacteria, because the bad bacteria, just like the good bacteria, also produce metabolites. But those metabolites, and why we call them bad bacteria, is because they produce bad metabolites for us, things that are toxic for us. So there's lots of different metabolites that then escape from the gut again, produced by these bad bacteria, that actually cause inflammation in our body. And we now know that many different species here can be linked to, I suppose, different inflammation in the brain that we now know can correlate with anxiety, depression, ADHD, other conditions. Other toxins can produce problems that cause inflammation in our heart and our cardiovascular area. So lots of different toxins are produced by bad bacteria. And what we want to do is reduce the amount of bad bacteria so we don't have these bad metabolites getting into our body that cause inflammation and lots of problems, whilst at the same time increasing the amount of good bacteria so we have loads of good bacteria, loads of good metabolites. So it's all about, when we say balance your microbiome, and you probably hear us banging on about that all the time, that's what we're talking about. We want to get, because you're never going to get rid of all of the bad bacteria. It's like, I often say, it's like a field and you want loads of grass, but you're always going to have a few weeds. Yeah. And some of those bad bacteria are there for a reason as well, and you're never going to get rid of them. But what we want to do is have as much grass and as little weeds as possible. So it's about feeding the good ones. And like, there's loads of ways to do that. But what Simprove does is supercharges the good bacteria so that you get a whole load of lactate. This is what these particular bacteria do. That's why they've been chosen, because they produce lactate, and lactate feeds the other bacteria that are already in your body to start to grow and multiply as well. And that's why people see such a fast reaction with Simprove. We know after 12 weeks, you will get that reaction because it's all been clinically measured and everything. But for some people, it might happen after 2 weeks because their level of good bacteria wasn't so bad. But for other people who might have been on like loads of antibiotics in their life, or they might not have like lots of good eating and eating lots of processed food, or very stressed, or not outside a lot of the time, all these things impact your bad bacteria. So their levels are much, much lower. And so it's going to take longer for you to actually see an improvement. So when I said that to you, keep going for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
This happens all the time. People reach out to me all the time and say, I've seen the reviews on the website and people are seeing a difference after 1 week, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks. It's not happening for me. What's going on with me? It's simply because you don't know what your levels are when you start this. Everybody is different. You can't see these bacteria. You can't measure them. So it's impossible to know how long it's going to take for you to get up to the level where you're going to see that optimum result. But it will happen in 12 weeks, as long as you feed those bacteria and as long as you take the Simprove properly, if that makes sense. First thing in the morning, so you're getting that shot, all those bacteria, those 10 billion every single day, into your large intestine.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but my goodness, I mean, you're like an encyclopedia. You're so informative, like, honest to God, you're so informative.
Well, listen, Claire, I've been studying this bloody thing. I've been studying this for years, really
Every
and
time
truly.
I
And it's
speak
all,
to
it came because of my own personal experience. Like, I didn't learn any of this in college. We don't learn it in pharmacy. They don't learn it going through medical school neither, is what I've discovered. Very few, even gastroenterologists, know about the microbiome. So this is a very specialist area. And, I have learned it purely because I was trying to cure myself and solve my own problems, because I didn't want to be constantly on all of the medications that I was on, and also going for all those surgeries. So it was purely because I had a personal interest in it. And then I suppose since I discovered Simprove, and since it completely changed my life, I started working and being really close to the research and development teams in Simprove. And not even them, even the APC Centre down in Cork, I was down there a couple of months ago to see the work that they're doing, relating to the microbiome and say MS, obesity, Alzheimer's, what else are they doing? Female hormone health. Siobhan O'Mahony, Professor Siobhan O'Mahony is doing incredible work there, linking, so changing the microbiome to actually change a completely different disease condition. So it's not just about gut health, it's actually about so much more. There's amazing work going on in the whole field of obesity, because these little bacteria interact with the cells that produce GLP-1. And everybody's going around now about the Ozempics and Mounjaro and all of this, but actually those hormones are made in your gut, and you need a healthy microbiome to tell those cells which are on your gut lining, make GLP-1, please. Yeah. And it's a microbiome that do that. It's your bacteria that do that. So we know even having a really healthy microbiome actually is absolutely critical to control your weight as well. So, there's so many aspects to the microbiome and to these bacteria, not just to do with your gut health.
Well, it's amazing, and as you said, only because you wanted to research it for yourself, and then you're so much more invested in it, aren't you?
Absolutely.
But I'm just so grateful for you, because only for you, I don't know where I'd be now. Do you know? So it's great. So yeah, very grateful for you.
You're very
Um,
welcome.
someone asked actually, can anyone take Simprove? And then someone else asked, do you have to have something wrong with you to take Simprove?
Yeah, not
You
at
know,
all. Not at all. Absolutely not at all. Anybody can take it, really. We give it even to little babies. And the reason for that, a lot of babies who are born by C-section, we give it to, because whenever they're lifted out of, born by C-section, you're not coming down the vaginal canal. And that's where babies get their microbiome. So whenever they're born vaginally, they take a suck of the mum's vaginal mucosa, and that forms their microbiome. Now, you still get your microbiome after, your feeding and just with the environment and all, but it takes longer to do that. So we know C-section babies, they're more prone to infections, and they're more prone to allergies. So if you can establish their microbiome early, then that's a really good thing. So we give Simprove to very, very young kids. So all you do with children is you just weigh your child, and you give 1 ml per kilogram weight. So for example, if your child is 10 kilograms, it's 10 mils, 15 kilograms, then 15 mils. So,
okay.
and then like literally all the way up to any age really can take it. It's suitable for diabetics, sugar-free. We often get asked that. It's gluten-free, so suitable for celiacs. It's vegan. So really anybody can take it, Roseanna. There's no drug in it. There's just
Okay.
4 bacteria that should be in your gut. But for whatever reason, just the way we live today, I guess, with the diet that we eat, the stress that we go under, the lack of exercise that we have, and mainly the reason why we don't have a really good microbiome anymore is because of the overuse of antibiotics and different other medications like PPIs and many other medications that knock out your microbiome. So when you take an antibiotic, and they're life-saving medications, I'm not saying anything that we shouldn't take antibiotics, because as a pharmacist they're absolutely critical, but they are broad spectrum. You take them for maybe a throat infection, chest infection, whatever, UTI infection, and what happens is they don't know what's a good bacteria, a bad bacteria. They just wipe out all bacteria. So after every antibiotic that you take, you absolutely need to take a good probiotic, because it will take 1 year for your microbiome to come back to what it should be, just by eating through nutrition. So, and there's so many people who take multiple antibiotics or are on them constantly for UTIs or skin infections or whatever, and that is absolutely detrimental to your microbiome. So definitely post antibiotics, you definitely need to be on a probiotic. And even PPIs, people take them for stomach problems and everything, but they actually have an effect on your gut microbiome as well. So there's loads of medications that have an impact, a negative impact on your microbiome, and you should always just check that out and ask your pharmacist, and make sure that you're taking a good probiotic, especially after an antibiotic.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I would have been very prone to tonsillitis. I would get it every year without fail for years, and I haven't gotten it now in a number of
Yep.
years. And it's only now, talking about that, you were saying about, I was saying, God, I was on antibiotics an awful lot there for a long time. And I was trying to think, and it was for
Yeah.
tonsillitis. And we even talked about taking my tonsils out, and I never had to do that in the end. So
There you go.
there's a lot to
There
be
you go.
said for that.
There you
Yes,
go.
now there you go.
People say that to me all the time. I used to get multiple infections, UTIs, whatever. I don't get them anymore. And it's simply because, and don't forget, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Like, your gut lining does so much more than just letting nutrients across. It protects you, because you could be taking pathogens in, say, on top of your food, or just the way that so your gut, that's why your stomach produces a huge amount of acid. It's not just to break down food, it's actually to kill any bacteria that comes into you. So it's there to actually have a protective role, as is your gut lining, because your gut lining is trying to keep everything bad that you take into your
Yes,
body from
yes,
getting into your body. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? To getting into your blood system and crossing. But if you don't have, if your gut lining is compromised, and it's not, intact the way it should be, then immune system is not going to be able to protect you as best as it can. And not only that, those little epithelial cells along your gut lining, that's what we call them, they actually communicate with your immune cells, so your B cells and T cells, and they tell them what to do. So your microbiome produces chemicals, these metabolites, that communicate with your epithelial cells, which then communicate with your immune cells and say, go off now and fight that infection over there, whatever. So this is all happening. We don't even know what's happening, but your immune system is absolutely communicating with those epithelial cells, which is communicating with your bacteria. So again, having a really healthy microbiome means that it's producing the right metabolites to make sure that that whole process is happening. So having a really healthy microbiome is absolutely critical for your immune health as well.
Okay, gosh, fantastic. And can you take some proof when taking Ozempic? Has been one of the questions.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And the big thing about Ozempic or any of these GLP-1 medicines, they slow down your gut motility, you know, so people feel hungry, less hungry, obviously, and they don't eat as much, but also anybody on GLP-1s will notice that they're a little bit more constipated and they feel a lot fuller. So it takes longer for food to transit through your gut. And so taking something like Simprove and improving your microbiome will improve your gut motility. So for yourself, Rosanna, I know like you might have had a fast gut motility. Other people who are constipated would have a slow gut motility. And what Simprove does, or what having a healthy microbiome does, and Simprove gets you to have a healthy microbiome, it basically gets your gut to work, because your gut's a big muscle and it's just contracting and relaxing to push food along, so that it can be broken down, number one, and that your nutrients can be absorbed. And what Simprove does, it ends up basically getting your gut to work at the speed it should work at. So if it's going too fast, it'll slow that gut motility down. If it's going too slow, it improves that gut motility, because the bacteria inside in your microbiome are producing metabolites to tell your gut muscle what to do. Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of running like clockwork the way you should be.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anybody who has loose bowels, suffers from diarrhea, it'll help that. And then people go, well, how is it going to help with constipation? Because it produces the metabolites in order to either speed up or slow down. So it gets your gut mobility to work effectively. And so anybody who are on GLP-1s or any other medicine that causes constipation, or loose bowels, the reverse, it will help in that occasion. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and let's talk about the menopause. So a few people have asked, does it help with the menopause and how?
Yeah. So basically, and this is where actually we're going to have an event at the end of June, and I'm going to actually ask Siobhan to come and speak at this event. So it's really interesting. In your gut, you have in your microbiome, you have what we call an estroblome. Yeah. So it's 10 bacteria that basically regurgitate your estrogen and your progesterone. So basically it recirculates your estrogen and progesterone and spits it back into your system. So if you don't have a healthy microbiome, that process can't happen. Yeah. So optimizing your microbiome will actually help with your estrogen and progesterone levels as well. Yeah. So, and women will notice whenever they go through menopause, yeah, and perimenopause, their progesterone and their estrogen levels are falling. Yeah. And that falling has an effect on your microbiome, as does, if you haven't got a healthy microbiome, it has an effect on your estrogen and progesterone. So the two things are completely linked together. So again, improving your microbiome will 100% help with that regurgitation of the estrogen and progesterone, so that you can feel the effects of it. And as a result of that, now it's not going to increase it like HRT would do or whatever, but whatever you have there, it helps to recirculate that in your system. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And Professor Siobhan Mahoney is doing amazing work on this, not just to do with the recirculation of it, but actually the impact of having a healthy microbiome on vaginal dryness, I think she's looking at, and two other aspects of perimenopause and menopause. And whenever we have that event, I'm going to ask her to come along, and I'll share that with you if any of your followers want to come to it, because there'll be an event in Dublin at the end of June for sure.
What's that professor's name again? Siobhan?
Siobhan Mahoney. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay,
Amazing.
perfect.
She's doing incredible work. Just linking, because men and women have different microbiomes, and your microbiome changes as you go through your age as well, because your hormones are changing. So no two people have the same microbiome. It's kind of like a fingerprint, you know? Everybody's
Yeah,
different.
it's
And
really,
it's unique. Exactly. It's unique. And even athletes, for example, different athletes, because of the type of exercise that they do, have different microbiomes. It's really fascinating. So if you're in contact sport, you and they've done an analysis of this here in Ireland actually, where they looked at Irish rugby players, and because that's a contact sport, they have a microbiome that produces a lot more short chain fatty acids that are anti-inflammatory. Whereas if you're a long distance runner, you have a buildup of lactic acid in your muscles because you're running long distances. And those athletes that run long distances have a different microbiome that have bacteria to break down lactic acid.
oh,
So it's absolutely fascinating. Your body will adjust depending on the way that you live. Yeah. And your bacteria will respond to that. So everybody is different. The way you live has an impact on your microbiome. And obviously then your microbiome has an impact on your health. Yeah.
wow, isn't it interesting? And I
Yep.
think that's why people, I suppose we're all trying to find a better way or a healthier way of living, or we're trying to improve. And I think when you do suffer with something, whether it's like IBS or something like that, and you find something like Simprove that works for you, you're nearly like, God, did I really need to suffer all those years? And
I
you
know.
want to nearly buy back that
Yeah.
time and
I
kind of
know.
try and
Yeah.
live the healthier life,
Yeah.
don't you?
And people
Uh,
get really annoyed and frustrated about that. Yeah, they do. And people say to me, listen, I didn't buy it because I thought it was expensive. And I thought, and I get that all the time, Rosanna.
yeah,
Why did I not just buy it? Why did I not invest in myself? Why did I put myself last? Why,
yes,
I get that all the time. If only
that's
I
it
had a
too.
known. Yeah, if
That's it
only.
too. And I
Yeah,
know a lot of it does come down to expense and
absolutely.
finances, but the subscription, it definitely it
It's a
helps,
good.
because
Yeah, and I think we have 20% off at the minute as well,
that was
Rosanna,
something
for
I
anybody.
wanted
So
to
there's 20.
ask.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
think
is
so.
there a
Yeah, until the end
code?
of the week.
Is there a code on it then
No,
for that? Is there,
no,
no,
there's no code. I think
just
it's just off
20%
the
off at the
site.
moment.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
20% off if you want to buy. So basically how it works for anybody who doesn't know, it comes in these boxes of 4, and
Yeah.
each bottle, like you had in your hand, is a week's supply for an adult.
Yeah.
You use less, obviously, if you have a child, because you're not going to use the 70 mils, but each bottle
Yeah.
is a week's supply. And then in the box, you've got 4 bottles. And how it works for the 12-week program, if you buy 2 boxes, which is 8 weeks, you get the
Mm.
third box for free. So
Yeah.
Simprove will give you that last 4 weeks so that gets you to the end of the 12-week
Yeah.
program so you see the best results. So normally the 12 weeks is 199, but there's 20% off at the moment, so that brings it down to 159.99 or whatever if you want to get the 12 weeks, and you get a
Yeah.
free little shot glass with it as well.
Yeah.
Or as you said, Rosanna, you don't have to go with that. You can just buy, I suppose, a 4-week pack on its
Yeah.
own, and there's 20% off that as well. And when you buy 2 of those, you've got 2 receipts, and you can still claim a third month back for free if you want
Yes.
to do that.
Oh.
Or you can go for subscriptions, which
Oh.
is the cheaper option again. So you can just subscribe, and you can subscribe for the year, and you can get it for 54.99 with the delivery free. Yeah. And so it's
Okay.
delivered, so you don't have to pay a delivery charge. You can cancel with a month's notice there. Or if you
Yes.
don't want to sign up to that, you can just sign up to the flexible option, and that's 64.99.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
10 a month. Yeah.
So there's loads
Perfect.
of different
Someone's.
options really. And the whole idea here is, I suppose, bring down the price for anybody who didn't want to pay the whole 12 weeks all up front.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also to give people a chance to try it that might never have tried it by bringing down the price.
Yeah, and again with the subscription, like as I was saying, you reach for that last bottle and it's, oh, I must put in an order, and then it's in logged in there with all those other things
Yeah.
on your list that you have to do. Whereas with the subscription, it's coming to your door.
Yeah,
You
you
know
don't
it's
have to.
coming. You
Yeah,
don't have to think about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So that way then there's no time lapse, or if you didn't order it in time, you might have to miss a few days, which I found out the hard way
yeah,
didn't serve me in
yeah.
the end.
People
Um
say that, and you can always push out as well. Say if you're going
yeah.
on holidays or something, or you have a build up for whatever reason, you forgot to take it a couple of days, or what, I don't know,
Yes.
any particular reason at all. You can push out your delivery date to say, actually, I don't want it on that date. Give it to me a week later or whatever. So it's completely flexible that way as well. So
Brilliant.
you just log into your account and change the dates. It's not a problem.
No,
Yeah,
it's like in fairness, it's kind of made impossible to not be able to do. In fairness, there's great
yeah,
options. And
yeah.
someone
Loads
says
of
that they
options.
bought. Yeah, someone said there they bought it the last time we spoke. I think we chatted about 6 months ago, and it's been a
Yeah.
game changer. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah, that's
And
brilliant.
I,
I'm delighted. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
absolutely delighted. And most people will say that if you look on our website, you'll see all the reviews.
yeah,
If anybody wants to log on to the website and just go to the product,
yeah,
and below that, you'll see all of the reviews. And people, there's bucket loads of reviews, obviously, for IBS and Crohn's and colitis and diverticulitis. But then you'll see loads of reviews for inflammatory conditions, say in the skin, because your gut is connected to every other system in your body. So loads of people use it for psoriasis or eczema or dermatitis or acne, even inflammatory
same.
acne, rosacea, massive, massive connection between your gut and your skin. And actually, even in America now, the American Institute of Dermatology, if you appear into a dermatologist with rosacea, the first thing that they do is treat your gut. They do a breath test for Helicobacter, and that's an overgrowth of a
Oh
bad
yeah,
bacteria. Many
yeah.
people probably here have heard of it because you go on triple therapy, 2 antibiotics and a PPI to kill it.
And it's still
Um,
there.
yeah, absolutely. But that's what they do now in the States. The first thing that they do is they test for Helicobacter, and that's how common rosacea is to your gut. It's linked to a gut imbalance. So any kind of inflammation in your body, whether it be on your skin or
Yeah.
whether it be elsewhere in your body, I always say go back and treat the gut first because
Yes.
it's usually coming from the gut.
Starts there. Is
Starts
that
there.
Helicobacter pylori? Is that's an ulcer, isn't it?
Yeah. What's that?
Helicobacter. What
Pylori.
was it?
So it's basically a
Pylori.
bacteria that we all have. It's
Yeah.
all living in our stomach. Everybody has it. However, when it becomes overgrown, yeah, and
Mm,
it gets to a high level, it produces again these bad
yes.
metabolites that cause huge reflux problems. And if it is left untreated, it will cause ulcers in your stomach. Which and
Okay.
I've met plenty of people with massive ulcers where they were bleeding internally with Helicobacter. So you've got to get it under control. And what they
Yeah.
do is they do a breath test to test for a gas the Helicobacter actually give out. And
Mm,
then what they treat it with is what we call triple therapy. So it's 2 really high dose antibiotics and a PPI, which is a protein pump inhibitor. So it's a medicine that you take to stop acid being produced in your stomach.
okay.
And that's the reason for that is to try and give your stomach lining an opportunity to heal up again. So many people take PPIs, say for reflux or for any kind of like stomach issues at all,
Okay.
people with hernias and the likes of that. So the likes of Losec, the old style Losec or omeprazole, pantoprazole, Nexium. There's loads of these now because there's lots of generics or whatever. So those all are called PPIs. That's the drug class of it.
Okay.
But for triple therapy, you go on a really high dose of a PPI and 2 antibiotics in a really high dose, and that kills the overgrowth of Helicobacter. But what I
Yeah.
always tell people is, if you're prone to Helicobacter, get checked maybe in about 3, 4, 5 years time because it has a tendency to come back again. It has a tendency. So
Well, no,
always
I haven't had it in
triple check
years.
again.
But yeah, but I do remember having to take the double course of antibiotics, and that then being so strong on the stomach as well.
Yeah.
You're bringing back all these memories to me tonight. Tonsillitis and
But you see,
Helicobacter pylori.
yeah, but you're taking that to kill these bacteria, which is causing
Yeah,
all of this. But then taking those antibiotics knocks out all the good bacteria in your large intestine. So you should 100% then, especially after triple therapy, because such a high dose of antibiotics, or
yeah,
anybody in hospital who's had an antibiotic and an IV drip, such a high dose, you need to take a probiotic because that is wiping out your good bacteria in your gut.
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. My goodness, wow. Oh, my mom now would be fascinated to hear about all of this because she was a nurse,
Yeah.
and like she'd be always saying, "Oh, you need to go to the doctor now, and you need this and you need that." But I must tell her now, like about how these are the things that I haven't suffered with for so long, which is great.
There you go.
Do you want to take some questions maybe from
From the chat
here?
here, yeah, sure. I'll go back
Yeah,
and do that. Yeah. And if anybody's
I
any other questions, I know people often ask me, what kind of things ruin your microbiome. So the
yeah.
one thing I'd say is those antibiotics, PPIs, like lots of different medications will do that. That's first thing. Steroids, another thing. Anybody on steroids? Um, so that would be the first thing. The second thing then is the food that we eat, Rosanna. So, you know, eating really good whole foods with lots of fiber feeds a good bacteria in our gut. And especially if you have lots of color on your plate, we always talk about different diversity.
Yeah.
So diversity is really, really key because all these bacteria prefer different fibers, and you get different fibers from diversity in your diet. And
Yeah.
so the ideal number is 30 different plants, right, that we want to be going for. And the reason for that is 30 different plants will give you that diversity. And that seems like a lot. However, you know, a plant, what we call a plant, is a fruit, a vegetable, a whole grain, and not a seed, a legume, herbs, spices, even coffee and dark chocolate that come from the cocoa bean
Okay.
are deemed to be plants. So variety is what I would always say, because that'll feed the good bacteria.
Yeah.
If you eat ultra processed foods, right, or lots of sugar, sugar feeds bad bacteria. They thrive on sugar.
Okay.
And it's not just the sugar you're adding to your tea or your coffee. You got to think about the hidden sugars in foods. So, you know, when we buy something that's low fat in the supermarket, and a lot of people go for low fat options because they're trying to maybe control their cholesterol or whatever, in order, when usually when they take the fat out of something and they're producing that, they will put sugars into it to make it more palatable. So this is where we find hidden sugars in products. So you always just got to check the back of the label and look for how much sugar content is in your products. The other
Okay.
thing that we find in foods is all these additives, emulsifiers, colors, preservatives, all of those cause an inflammatory reaction in the gut because they're not natural at all. Yeah, these are usually things that are produced in a lab somewhere. They're synthetic products. We're consuming them, and unfortunately, they cause inflammation in the gut whenever you consume them. So this is why we're always talking about trying to get away from ultra processed foods and try to eat whole foods, and that's really difficult to do in the
Yeah.
modern world when we're busy, busy,
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
But even if you got your breakfast right or your lunch right, or even if you got one meal right, then you're 33%, you know,
Okay.
better than what you started off with. So
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
even with one meal and try and build it up, because if you got your breakfast right and your whole family's breakfast right, honest to God, in a couple of weeks' time, you are going to feel better. You're going to feel more energetic. You're going to see it in your skin. You're going to see it elsewhere. You're going to see it. Your kids are going to, you know, tell you different things. You can see it in concentration and whatnot, for them. And that will give you the motivation to then do the next meal. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's what usually happens. Don't try and do the whole thing together because it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And build it up. And like that's why I like batch cooking, say at the weekend. Because if you can do that then and get some of the dinners pre-prepared, and you know, like there's no additives in that, it's full of fiber, it's full of different diversity, then you're feeding the good bacteria, yeah, for you and your kids or whatever. Because you got to look at your food on your plate, not just food for you,
Yes.
food for the bacteria inside you. Like there's more bacteria in you than there are human cells in your body. Like we are more bacteria than we are human. So you've got to start looking at your food and your plate and kind of go, is this food that's going to feed my good bacteria, or am I actually feeding my bad bacteria here? Yeah,
Okay.
because the outcomes are very different. So the food we eat is really, really critical for your microbiome. And then other things are stress. So lots of adrenaline, lots of cortisol floating around your body has an impact on bad bacteria versus good bacteria, and exercise as well, you know. So stress and also just being outside is really good, you know, because people who live in the countryside have a very different microbiome to people who live in the city, actually. Very different. So the more that you're outside in nature, like even interacting with pets, like the kids playing on the ground and with soil, like things that we tend to tell them not to do anymore, is
Yes.
really good for your microbiome because you're
Okay.
bringing in lots of diversity actually. And you know, when we went through COVID and we were sterilizing absolutely everything to, you know, we were washing the vegetables, we were taking them from the
Yeah.
supermarket and everything, that
Yes.
sterile, yes, it was good to prevent COVID and all of the rest, but actually not good for our gut microbiome
No.
at all.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that are really important, just to, they
Yeah.
have a negative impact. So then if you think about the reverse of all of that, that has a positive impact on your microbiome. So, you know, if you are going to commit to the 12-week program of Simprove and give it a go, just try and make some changes to your diet at the same time so that you
Yeah.
see the best results that you can possibly see. And I always say, like, if you use that 12-week window just to kind of build up some new little good habits and
Yes.
try and maintain those, then that would be a really good thing to do. Yeah.
Or even as you're saying, with Simprove, if you start taking how much fibre did you recommend to take every day?
Minimum 30 grams. And even if you start tracking that,
Yes.
honestly, people will say, and I have yet to meet a dietitian or a nutritionist to say people are eating enough fiber. Not a hope, not a hope. So there is a brilliant little fiber tracker on the gut stuff. These are two twins that were involved in the Zoe project with Tim Spector to investigate the gut microbiome in identical twins. Why did one twin get sick and another twin didn't? And basically what he, especially whenever they're 99% the same genes, yeah. So he did this big project in the UK where he did a call out for identical twins to get involved in this study that he was doing. Because what he found in his research, he was a doctor, is he couldn't understand why one identical twin might end up getting cancer and one other twin was really perfectly healthy. What was it all about? And the big thing after all of that study was completed was the thing that was different between the twins was their microbiome. And so if you had a healthy microbiome, you had healthier outcomes, whereas if you didn't have a healthy microbiome, you were more prone to different diseases. So yeah, so there's these two twins called Alana and Lisa, and the two of them were involved in this study and went through the whole process and then got fascinated by the whole thing. And now they've set up a business called the Gut Stuff Twins. And they have this amazing tracker on their website to track for fiber. And they produce little fiber bars and fiber drinks now, and they talk about their experience and in changing their own microbiome and changing their health and all, because they were DJs. And so they would be up at night time, drinking and, partying and whatnot, and definitely not eating healthy or whatever. But since they were involved in this whole project with Tim Spector, they have completely changed their life by changing the way that they eat and all of the rest to change their microbiome, and the health outcomes is completely different. So they follow them online.
Yeah,
They're
I will
amazing
check
girls.
them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
That
they're really cool
sounds
girls.
amazing.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Will I answer some of these questions?
Yeah, because I
Somebody
think I
said,
found out the questions for you.
yeah. Okay, so somebody was asking about colon cancer and for the rectum. I'd highly recommend it for anybody who has any type of cancer, because butyrate is anti-inflammatory and it will heal up the gut lining. So really good for any type of gastrointestinal cancers, colorectal cancer and all of the rest. What I would say is, when you're going through your chemotherapy, if you are going through chemotherapy, very often oncologists don't want you to be on anything whatsoever. So speak to your oncology team, first of all, to make sure you're okay to take it if you're on a chemotherapy regime. So that's the first thing I do. But as soon as that is finished, absolutely 100% go for it, because what the bacteria in Simprove do is they produce these huge amount of butyrates. So they're particularly four particular strains of just lactate, right, which feed the other bacteria in your gut. So it's not just about the bacteria that's improved that you're drinking, it's actually about what they do when they get into your large intestine. So the reason he selected those four strains is because it produces a huge amount of lactate, which feeds the other bacteria in your gut to get them to grow as well. But these four particular strains produce a huge amount of butyrate, acetate, and propionate, these three short chain fatty acids. And butyrate is incredibly healing on the gut wall. It is anti-inflammatory, it is healing, and it is anti-carcinogenic as well. So anybody who goes through any type of cancer, and I know so many of our patients, particularly with breast cancer, have taken Simprove and, speak so highly about it, and you'll see it in all in the reviews. Anybody who has gone through chemo, I would highly, 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 highly recommend it, because generally speaking, there's a lot of antibiotics involved in that whole process as well. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Someone there said you need to write a guide to your
Okay.
gut.
Okay. Yeah, maybe someday when I have 2 minutes to breathe. Here's somebody on Septrin. So that again, as another very strong antibiotic, and valsiclovir. So that's an antiviral. Again, antiviral is not good for your gut at all. So anybody who's on antivirals, antibiotics, absolutely 110% go on Simprove. Yes, absolutely, I would do that. And the next one is about celiac. Daughter with celiac, age 8. Yes, it's gluten free. There's less than 5 parts per million. So to be gluten free, you have to have less than 20 parts per million in liquid form of gluten in the product. Simprove has less than 5 parts per million, so it's deemed to be gluten free. It's on the Celiac Society of Ireland's app, so
Yeah.
it's approved.
Yeah.
And that also means that actually you can claim your tax back. So if you're celiac, you can claim any sort of products or supplements that are gluten-free back at the end of the year through your ROS system. So all you need to do is get a receipt, upload it. They then know, okay, that you've spent this money, and you get 20% back in your tax as well.
Okay.
Yeah, which is good for anybody who has celiac.
Yeah.
Diverticulitis, yes, no, absolutely no problem, or diverticulosis as well. And actually, Simprove have done clinical studies on both of those. So yes, 100%. Does it help with hair growth? There's no clinical studies done on hair growth, but we do get a lot of people saying that they notice a change, definitely in their skin, 100% in the skin. So if you have any inflammatory conditions in your skin, there is absolutely loads and loads of people who will send us pictures before and after. Hair, people do say as well, and it's probably because you can digest your foods better, and so the nutrients from your foods actually get into your system, and it's more to do with that, I would say, than actually anything in Simprove stimulating your hair growth. Here's somebody with C. diff. They actually have a clinical study done with Simprove with C. diff and MRSA patients, to show that the bacteria, basically what actually happens is an overgrowth of good bacteria, which actually starves out the bad bacteria, one of which being C. diff, and can eliminate it. Because both bacteria are competing for the food in your gut. So anybody with C. diff or MRSA, I would 110% recommend it. Yeah. What else do we have? Somebody here, do you think it would have an effect on getting breast cancer? I don't know, like breast cancer or any type of cancer is caused by a multitude of different reasons. So, and listen, researchers still don't know what causes a lot of cancers, or what causes ordinary cells to start dividing as cancerous cells. So I couldn't say there was any evidence on any of that, but what I will say is that because the short chain fatty acids have an anti-carcinogenic effect, if you are diagnosed with any type of cancer, I definitely would recommend it 100%. It wouldn't do any harm, it could only do good. Bought this game changer. Can you link up the website? You can do that, Roseanna, afterwards. I was just about to say Sophie Morris on here. Yeah, Sophie does a lot of great work in terms of highlighting the foods that, the additives that are in foods and the hidden sugars that are in foods. And absolutely, I mean, 110%, I think what she's doing is just really highlighting what we're consuming. Great talk. Is it any good for immunosuppressants? So what I would say is, if you're on an immunosuppressant, talk to your doctor, your consultant, just about going on it. But so many people use it for various different conditions. I would speak to your team. I think you need to read the guide. Yeah, okay. You're a brilliant advocate for colorectal cancers, as years behind. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anybody who has any type of, and it's perfectly fine. Anybody who has a stoma bag, even an ileostomy, a colonoscopy, absolutely perfectly fine to take as well. Yeah. So that's not a problem. And I think that's it. I think that's all the questions.
I think you did very well there. Now,
Yeah.
there's some we might have gotten to, but I think you've covered a lot of it there, and I've
You think
definitely
so?
had some new learnings tonight as well. So we'll I'll save this down. I'll save this
Yeah.
live down so that everybody can go back and revert back to it, and we'll be linking the page and all of that. So
Yeah.
I have to say, my non-negotiable, and I can't recommend it enough. And people will always come into my DMs and ask me, or do you know what's brilliant is that they'll come in and they'll say, you talked about this before and I started taking it and I've never looked back, and I feel like this is amazing because I'm so passionate about it, because I've tried, tested, and I use this, and I'm using it so long that I can stand behind it.
Yeah.
And I just love when someone says to me, thank you for, and for bringing this awareness to me. And that's what I say to you. Thank you, Oonagh, for bringing the
No
awareness
problem.
of it to me.
Yeah,
So
no problem. No problem. And listen, if there's anybody on here watching and you just don't feel like you can ask a question because some people might be on certain medications or whatever, there's no problem. Just you can tag me afterwards and just send me a DM and I'll come back to you. There's absolutely no problem. Or if anybody who's watching this back after, like not on here afterwards, again, 110%, just send me a DM if you have a question. It might be about you, it might be about children, your mum or dad or whatever, so no problem at all. Be delighted to be able to help.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there, Oonagh. It was so lovely
You're
seeing
very
you
welcome.
again. Yeah.
Enjoy the last of the
Thanks a
sunshine.
million. Oh, I will do. Thanks a million.
No
See you
problem. See
later.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Very welcome. I'm trying to come out of it now. Thank you very much, everyone, for being on here. You've been brilliant. Thanks a million.